everyone. I'm Taney Roniger, and welcome to Why It Matters. I am thrilled to be having my first conversation of the series today with Daniel Hill. Daniel and I have known each other for quite a while. We've done a lot of these conversations. But today we're going to be talking about something we're both really passionate about, which is cave art. Daniel Hill is a painter, sound artist, educator, and writer exploring the intersection of visual art, sound, and science. Is that about right, Daniel?
I'd say so, yeah.
Okay, well, welcome. Daniel and I are probably the only two people who've read this book. We've both been really influenced by this book by American poet Clayton Eshelman. It's called Juniper Fuse. Out of print now, which is a real shame. It was only published in, I think, 2003.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not that old. Anyway, we will talk later about Eshelman's thesis, which is kind of extraordinary, I think, really provocative. But in the beginning, for those of you who may not be familiar with cave art, we'll be showing some images, talking a little bit about why they're so extraordinary. And then we're going to stop sharing and we'll just have a conversation. All right. Okay, so let's jump in. Share. Okay, cave art of the Upper Paleolithic, why it matters today. So I think, Daniel, we should start with the where, when, what, and how of this. So for those who don't know, the Upper Paleolithic, we're talking about between 40,000 years ago and 10,000 years before the present, I should say. The images that we're going to be looking at today are exclusively from Europe, mostly Spain and France. Cave art has been found all over the world, which is kind of incredible. It sort of erupted at around the same time, about 40,000 years ago. But so we're talking exclusively about Europe. And Daniel, I don't know about you, but the very first class I teach every semester, I start with cave art, right? Start at the very beginning.
I do too.
You do too. Okay. I'm very curious about how you teach it. For me, I always start with this image. It's, this is a hand silhouette made some 40,000 years ago on the cave wall. I just find that so moving.
It really is. I mean, it's the presence of someone saying I'm here and it's important that I'm here for reasons that are a mystery to us. But when we look at that, you're making a connection with somebody that lived tens of thousands of years ago. And the mystery of why is what's so fascinating to me. But I start showing just an interior of a cave with people going into a cave, and I tell the students, why did our ancestors do this? It's difficult to imagine what life was actually like in the Paleolithic, but it's very different from now. Just trying to find enough to eat and not be eaten yourself. Was a full-time job, right? But they found it necessary to take on significant added risk to go into these caves and make art. And so I tell my students, look, we'll never know for sure why they did it.
Yeah.
But all we really need to know is that they did, and that is really significant.
Yeah.
And I think students connect with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have yet to encounter a class that wasn't interested. They all kind of light up,
Yeah.
The urge to make a mark on the world has been with us since the very dawn of humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like graffiti, right? These hand impressions or silhouettes, I guess, were made, of course, starting 40,000 years ago, but also the different hands are made centuries, if not millennia apart.
Yeah.
Just like kind of implies that people would just go in there and tag their presence.
It's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking about the connection to graffiti.
Yeah.
And that connection to the time and now. There's some things that are similar, and there's of course a lot that is not. And I was thinking about graffiti artists, stealing away in the night to tag is operating pretty much solo. And this is not the case here. This is this is a communal effort.
Yeah.
When you tally up everything that needs to happen in order for these cave paintings to occur, this is a group effort.
Yeah.
It's not about the ego, it's about the group and the importance of the group. And I was reading about this too, and that, of course, it's all speculation. Maybe there was some kind of a ritual or something, and the hand was put to say, I was here, I was present as part of that.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so many different hypotheses about why these people did these. And so the important thing to stress is that we probably will never know, right?
Right,
Definitively.
right.
It's just
It's
saying,
fun to speculate, though.
yeah, and just to talk about what they did. But Daniel, okay, so here are the hands. I'm going to go into the next image, but you mentioned the group effort. This was a collective effort. Why do we know that there are many people involved at once?
Well, I mean, when you think about what's involved in making paintings, it's easy to now you order online, the materials come to your door. They had to make a trip probably to go find the pigment. If it was iron oxide or whatever it was, that was a journey with risk involved. Extracting the mineral, processing the mineral, making tools to process the minerals. And then, this is something that I didn't know. There's binder in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't really realize that. Of course, it's kind of like, yeah, animal fat is,
yeah,
but it makes you wonder how much art was made that didn't survive.
right.
Um, but getting all of that, getting it organized, figuring out how you're going to light the cave. Some of these paintings are up on the ceiling, and a scaffolding had to be built. I mean, it's mind blowing, really,
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
think on top of everything else, just trying to survive. And of course, going into these caves is incredibly dangerous, and cave bears and cave lions are named for a reason. you know, so and plus we have all these handprints. I think there's evidence of children's footprints.
yeah, yeah,
So it seems to be a communal effort to do this. Everybody was on board, it seems. It was deemed important enough, and then the scope of time too.
hmm,
You look at some other historical art. Our sample size may be 1,000 years or 2,000 years for a culture. What is the sample size here? It's 25, 30,000 years. Every time I try to look up the number, there seems to be controversy. I know there's some controversy about Chauvet, but we're talking a long period of time
right.
uh, where this was felt to be an essential part of life, even though it was beyond survival,
Yeah, yeah,
which logically makes no sense.
right. One thing I want to stress, but a lot of these drawings, I'm calling them drawings because I love drawing. You can call them paintings. Were found in really, really remote areas inside the cave complex. I mean, it's not just like you entered the cave and there are some walls that you painted on or drew on, right?
Yeah.
These people really, went through narrow corridors, like miles in the cave interiors. I mean, this was no joke.
It's mind blowing.
It is mind blowing, and it was dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. And this is the most fascinating thing to me about it. Being an artist today is really difficult.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
think
right.
about that. I mean, it's inspiring to think that imagine the courage it took to go in there and make these paintings and the risk involved. I mean,
Yeah,
I find that to be endlessly fascinating and inspiring.
because it raises the question, why? First of
Why?
all, art
Why?
seems to be a real human need, an essential human need.
Yeah.
Otherwise, right? They didn't need to be doing it for survival. People have kind of discredited the hunting hypothesis that it was some kind of hunting ritual magic thing
Yeah. Yeah.
because these animals that they drew, most of them were not prey animals. They didn't need, bison, right?
Right. Right.
we know that they ate primarily caribou and deer, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is fascinating. No, I think they by doing this and making it making creativity be such a big part of their life, they kind of invented who we are
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
They invented art, but they also invented us.
yeah.
It's easy to take that for granted, but um, the the step that was taken conceptually in making the work, and maybe we'll go deeper into that later,
Definitely.
is the essence of who we are today, I
Yes.
would say.
The way that I introduce these, not only, starting from the very beginning, the dawn of humanity, but also within the context of class on line. What can a line do? People tend to assume, and who wouldn't, that these things would be very crude, and primitive, right? Let me go to a better example. People always talk about, scholars, they talk about these things are so beautiful and they're so sophisticated, but they never tell us why, what makes them so sophisticated, right?
Yeah,
Here, and so this is one of my favorite ones. This I think is in Chauvet, maybe Lascaux, but it's a cave bear, right?
yeah,
Um, First of all, don't think that they're drawing from observation, right?
yeah. They didn't have a bear, hold still.
Right,
Wow.
exactly. No, they're not. They're not looking at the bear while they draw this.
No,
It's all from memory.
yeah,
It's all from memory. And so that's impressive in itself. If you ask me to draw like my car right now, I'd give you a little crude four wheels and I don't know, but I don't know about where it slopes
yeah, yeah,
and this person knew exactly all the curves. And not only that, it's the line itself is lyrical. It's not a hard kind of cartoony outline. It's an incredibly sophisticated line. It varies in weight, where there would be more shadow, more pressure applied. The economy of means, I think, is also something noteworthy because this is to me a gesture drawing. It's
yeah.
probably made with like 4 or 5 strokes, and yet it captures something not just about what the animal looked like, but something essential about it, something of its essential nature. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And it speaks to the quality of attention that they were bringing to the world around them.
Yeah.
Because this is from knowledge as much as from observation. This is knowledge that's been completely internalized
Right.
and felt deeply, known deeply. I mean, the when you think about the attention that was required just to stay alive,
Yeah.
situational awareness and staying away from one of these bears is certainly something you had to do. There was a sensitivity to their surroundings, obviously, because yes, this is a line that is imbued with so much information.
Right.
And I talk about that with students, a line, the quality of line and line that it has information in it and line that doesn't, you could just mindlessly make a mark. But if you make a mark and you are feeling or thinking about something, this sounds a little woo scientifically, but I really do think that the mark making can be imbued with information, almost subliminal information that communicates to this incredible machine that we have, our brain, that's taking in so much information. And I think even hasn't there been some studies about the morphology of these drawings that they've looked at the skulls of the actual cave bears and they say these are really quite accurate to
Yeah.
the species that were alive at that time.
Yeah. All those are such important points that we will further elaborate later. But like the fact that this was drawn from memory and internalized knowledge, as you say,
Yeah,
is incredible to me. It suggests that they were so deeply in tune with the world around them. They had to be, right?
beyond our comprehension.
Beyond our comprehension. Another funny thing is that people always assume that people back, 40,000 years ago were dumber than we are, more primitive, and I think they
Well,
were actually smarter.
well, that speaks to as a species, or maybe it's our culture. We're quite arrogant, and
Yes.
temporally arrogant, thinking that, anything that happened before us somehow has to be less or worse.
Yeah.
And, that's, I mean, when it comes to technical things, yes, but in some other things, maybe not.
Yes, exactly. They didn't have the technologies that we have, but man, they had the brain, the very same brain that we have.
The same brain.
And that's important. And they were sensing the world so, so acutely. You look at this bison, there are a lot of bison. Again, not drawn from observation. There's so much information in there. That's crazy.
Charged with such agency. I mean, they feel as if they could start moving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's, I think, another slide where I talk about that's Lascaux. I mean, that gives you a sense of like the difficulty, right? Of drawing these things up so high in the ceilings and to have it be so lyrical and fluid and alive. Okay, so I want to talk about this one in particular, this bison. We're going to move on from bison. There are going to be other animals, for sure. But I want to at first draw your attention to the hind leg area. Man, I mean, those are just like two swoops of the charcoal, right? Two or three. Um, and there's so much information packed in there. You get the suggestion of volume, right? Some sides of the mark are darker than others. It gives us the sense of volume. The hoof is not a generic hoof. It's like very specific to the animal and just captured in these tiny, few strokes. And the thing that really most impresses me, and this will come up later for sure. Do you see in this picture how the neck of the beast, the head above the antlers, all the way around to the neck and back, that follows a fissure in the rock? Do you see
Uh,
that? Yeah.
yeah,
And so they're really using what's already there.
yeah, it's site specific, right? And I
Yes.
think that sadly I've never been to any caves.
Yeah.
I hope to change that,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's site specific in that the haunch of a bison is incorporated into the geological bulge of a cave in more ways than one, which I think we'll probably touch on in a little bit.
Absolutely. They're using, the fissures and the undulation of the walls, right? And we'll just throw this in for now. We have to keep in mind they're not using flashlights. These are like torches, right?
Yes,
With flickering light.
yes.
I mean, imagine what that does to this scene here. I think this is Chauvet. In fact, I know it's Chauvet. Can you imagine?
Yeah, this was something I would bring up, comparing cultures. We're photographing this with, probably really nice modern lights, but that's not how they were made, and that's not how they were viewed. They were viewed in flickering flame light, and there must have been a sense of movement. It's almost like proto cinema.
Yeah.
Uh, it,
Yeah.
it it must have been amazing.
I mean, this one is so sophisticated. I have, I think, a close up of the panthers. Here you go. This very
Yeah.
famous little section of the Chauvet Cave. My God. One of the things that my students learn in the second semester of first year of college is how to depict movement, in drawing. It's very difficult, right? They nailed it here. You look at those things, you get the overlapping forms. And again, the line is just so sophisticated. These are not crude outlines. They're lines that are doing something and really suggesting the swiftness of the stroke and therefore the swiftness of the animals as they're running by.
Yeah, and there's a real sense of exploration here.
Mm.
Yeah, the movement, but of course we don't know. Was the artist doing that to mimic movement? This one in particular reminds me of Leonardo's notebooks, where there's just this sort of exploration of drawing something in order to understand it, but that kind of layering. I guess these are cave lions.
Yeah, they're lines.
Did they cluster like that? And this is a memory of seeing a group of lions, or is this the exploration of just doing this head over and over again? The one all the way to the upper left looks, I'm not sure what that is.
I think it's a
I can't-
rhino.
It's a rhino.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the feline heads are just, they're stunning. I mean, it's
You know what else is interesting? I'm just going to throw this in there. Chauvet, okay, so there's this assumption that's kind of natural to make that art progresses, right? The very earliest would be the crudest, and then it would gradually progress and become more and more sophisticated. Not so.
yeah.
Chauvet is one of the oldest caves in Europe, and it is the most sophisticated, I'm going to argue, in terms of the drawings.
I was reading about that, and apparently there is some pushback on that
Hmm.
by some academics or scholars. But yeah,
What in
was it
particular are they pushing back against?
that it's not that old?
Oh, damn it.
Because it's the only example that old, at least what they say, that is that sophisticated. I mean, they dated it using I don't know what technique, but
Carbon
that's the date.
dating. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it came back as. But it seems that there's a lot of this. There's a lot of pushback. It's been a very cantankerous field for a long time. You know, for a long time, a lot of these were dismissed as forgeries.
Right.
It felt like it was impossible that primitive humans could have done something so good. It had to be fake.
How arrogant.
It is arrogant.
My God. Okay, that is interesting, the pushback. This I do know, and maybe this has not been attacked scientifically, that there are many more recent cave drawings that are way cruder than this. So even if this isn't the oldest, some of the ones that are only like, let's say, 10,000 years ago are much cruder. So whether this happened 20 or 40,000 years ago doesn't really matter to me, you know?
Me neither. It's astonishing.
Yeah. One of the other things that I like to bring up, so a couple years ago, no, many years ago, of course, Werner Herzog came out with that movie Cave
I
of
was
Forgotten
just going to
Cave.
bring that up.
Oh, so good, so good. But I remember an interview Terry Gross did with him, and she was like, "I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I assumed these things would be like stick figures, you know." But she said, "But they're so realistic, right?" So I'm just putting a little bookmark on that word because I take issue even with that. Okay, they're very sophisticated. They capture something of very much the morphology of the animals, like to an astonishing degree. You know, I've seen rhinos in zoos a million times. You ask me to draw a rhino, you know,
Yeah.
but I don't think we can call it mimesis. And for those who don't know, this is an approach to art that is geared toward just copying appearances, reproducing the visible world, right? And I don't think that's what's happening here. I don't think they're trying to tell us exactly what these animals look like. I think there's something much more interesting going on.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, this is realism as symbol,
Yes,
as metaphor.
exactly. A symbol, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and metaphor for sure, for sure. And we'll get into that later. But these are, I think they're much more closely aligned with gesture drawings, saying the most with the least, trying to capture the essential nature of something with the fewest strokes possible. I do
E-
not think that these artists labored for days, months on end to make the rhino, right?
Economy of line.
Yes, very much. That's important. This is one a rare instance of a, it looks to me like a deer, and they did eat deer. This is again one of the rare instances where they're actually depicting animals that they consumed. Pick things up a little here. Get this bull. My God, look at the legs.
Yeah. That's Lascaux, right?
I think it is Lesco. Yeah, the legs. And again, can't say it enough. They're not looking at these things. There, you get the perspective is accurate. You get that beautiful shading, which is gives us the sense of the volume of these legs. You get the angle and all that detail in the hoofs.
And overlapping
Yeah,
is something that happens over and over again. Is so yeah, you have perspective, which of course in art school was taught happened in what the Renaissance or
yeah.
but you have it here. And but the overlapping is so interesting. I'm not sure about this one in particular, but a lot of them are collaborations, intergenerational collaborations that some of them, I think, over thousands of years, where they're layering
Yeah.
on top, and it's not blotted out like this bowl is blotting out that red figure behind. It's transparent, which is so interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, that's another thing. I'm glad you raised that. If this were mimesis, why would they be using line instead of, I mean, look at a bull. Do bulls have outlines around them and see-through bodies? No, they do not.
Yeah.
This is something else entirely. This is not mimesis. It has to do with energy and, as you say, intimate knowledge. Um, yeah, we'll get into that. My God, how specific the curvature of the antlers.
Amazing.
Incredible. Oh, by the way, the pigments, I did look this up. It was mostly charcoal and iron oxides and
Iron oxide,
manganese.
manganese, yeah.
Manganese is a metal, and you do something to it and it turns really black. So this is, I think, also Lascaux. Again, you see that the scale, right, of these things, just enormous. Okay, Daniel, take us into the abstracts.
Yeah, well, it's something you don't hear about much. The abstract art in the caves. I think there is as much abstract glyphs as there is animal drawings. I could be wrong on that.
Actually, I think there's more. I watched something
Yeah,
of
yeah,
a
there could be.
scholar saying that there's more of these, what they call signs. The scholars call them signs
Right.
and animals.
Well, what's interesting about it is the 19th century European discoverers of these caves didn't recognize the abstract art as being art at all.
Mhm.
And that's because they didn't have abstract art in their culture,
Mhm.
which is, I think, an important part of cave art. It helps us to realize that we tend to only see that which we already know.
Right.
And there's other things happening here. You can cycle through.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Mhm.
This one might be my favorite. When you talk about intent and line, I'll tell my students, the difference between if you have two paintings of a red X on a white ground, and one person makes it with a roller, and it takes about 20 seconds, and the next person it takes a month using a small brush and building up layers of the color. In the end, it's the exact same painting. But are they going to feel the same?
Right.
They definitely will not feel the same. And that's that tacit knowledge that's being expressed, this notion that we know more than can be told, and it has to be expressed in some other way. And that's how these marks become charged. And when I look at this, I mean, yeah, you could say, oh yeah, it's some dots and lines, but when I look at that, I'm moved. There's something charged to this. There's intent. There's meaning here. I don't know what it is, but as a visual experience, it it I find it incredibly moving and powerful. Look at all these dots. I was reading somewhere that sometimes these dots are made here. The pigment is put onto the ball of the
Oh,
fist and
yeah.
and made that way. But these lines, this geometry is so mysterious.
Yeah.
What could that possibly be? I think I read somewhere it could be a clan sign. And there yeah, I guess. Or some kind of a hut or something. We'll never know. But I just respond to it as the aesthetic experience of communicating something that is not recognizable, but something is being said here.
Mhm.
And I think the abstract, or that's why abstraction is so interesting to me, because I think it has the potential to communicate over vast amounts of time. I mean, even the animals I kind of view as abstract art. They're contextually abstract.
Mhm.
And there's nothing, or very little there from their culture. Otherwise, we'd know why they made them, right? But when things are anchored to the culture, they can sometimes not communicate as strongly in time. When I look at this work, I think, wow, what does it mean to make a mark that outlives the maker?
Mm.
When you
And the culture of the maker.
yeah. And when you look at the population distribution at this time, which I was looking at, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it's very tiny, very tiny. So we're looking at these drawings tens of thousands of years later, and the vast majority of the audience for these drawings is living now.
Yeah.
As an artist, it makes me really think deeply. Who is my audience?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're so tied to the moment, but as an artist, your work lives on for a long time after you. And so,
Oh.
in the case here, your biggest audience hasn't even been born yet.
You know what's really interesting about these signs? Some expert in the field has gone all around the world studying these signs, appearing in caves, on every continent. The same 32 signs are found the world over.
Yeah,
There was no communication between people in, say, Africa and people in South America, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So that's weird. What does that say about the human mind?
Well, what did they say? Where did you, when you saw that, was there any speculation on that?
No,
Uh,
it's the observation. I mean, it's a very new find, very new. And she
yeah,
was presenting us with this astonishing fact. What are we to make of it? I have no idea. They do consider it a kind of, most scholars, a kind of proto writing. I don't think they consider it abstract art.
yeah.
They think it could either be counting or, yes, indeed, signs of one's tribe.
A calendar.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah,
And we're challenging that. I mean, if there's any strong evidence to support their thesis, then I will go with that. But until then, I respond to these very much the way that you do. They're just marks, and they're transmitting
yeah,
so much more than we know.
yeah. They're
And
communicating.
they're
Yeah.
committing. And the reason that, well, so much more than we think we know, how we know that they are transmitting something important is that we feel it. But it's funny that, most of the scholars just talk about the animals. What's this one, Daniel?
Yeah, this one I find it interesting. These marks, I guess, have been described as arrows.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes, I've been watching a lot of documentaries, and they'll just tell you something, oh, these are arrows, and then I really would like to know, well, how do we know that?
Right.
It could be something else too. I
Right.
just find it mysterious. What I was going to say about those signs. There's the other theory of the entoptic imagery, that some of these abstract glyphs match entoptic imagery, which is the imagery that arises from the back of the eye in when the eye is closed, or in pitch darkness, like phosphine type structures that are seen in the back of the eye. That's from this book, The Mind in the Cave, David Lewis Williams. There's a table in there that compares subjects that were taking psychedelics, and as their brain state was changing, they saw certain entoptic imagery and they drew them. And there's a table in the book that shows comparison between these abstract glyphs that are found all over and what was seen in this study, and they're remarkably the same. So the inference there is that they were exploring perhaps trance states through sound, or maybe they were taking substances. But it is a fascinating correlation between what is found all over the place,
Yeah.
and what was seen in these studies.
I wonder if this scholar, I'll have to look her up again, if she has speculated on that, because that's fascinating. And that would explain why they're universal. you know?
I think I know who you're talking about, and she has said that she doesn't favor it so much because of the quantity of them.
Mm,
Um, so she winds up going more in a quantitative manner, like there's not enough of those to prove it, but Lewis Williams is more in a qualitative as an artist, functioning from intuition and dealing with abstract glyphs. I find the Antarctic imagery to resonate strongly for me.
yeah, yeah, that's fascinating. It's just another example.
Yeah, just mysterious, okay, it's a calendar, but why that shape?
I know. Oh, you know what? In Chauvet, and I have to insert
Oh
this
yeah.
here because I did go to the replica of Chauvet. It's called Chauvet 2. They made this very you would think it's going to be like cheesy, but it's not, so amazingly done. And in the Chauvet cave, there was an animal made with those dots. So that could simply be another kind of mark making to evoke something that these people are seeing in the world, but maybe not.
I was going to save it for later, but it seems like a good time to say it. There have been acoustical mapping studies of the caves, and there appears to be a correlation between the placement of paintings in the cave and acoustical hotspots.
Wow.
And the deeper into the cave you get, the more resonant the chambers become, and the more abstract the art is. And often it is ochre dots in these acoustical hotspots, which, as a musician and a visual artist, I find that really fascinating.
Wow. One thing that I read that sort of resonates with that very much is that most of these drawings were located in places that had very low oxygen levels. So, and low oxygen changes your state of mind, your consciousness. So they could have been going to specifically to those places to have that altered state.
Yeah, yeah, and this one I had put in to get to the image here. I mean, look at that drawing. I
Yeah.
mean, and I think that is an engraving. But if you were to take that off the rock, just the essence of that drawing, and have it on a piece of paper and show it to me and say, "This is Picasso," I would believe it. I mean, I find that a stunning drawing. The horns, all the descriptive lines, I find it amazing.
His response after going to Lascaux, he actually went to the real Lascaux back in the 60s, I think. He said, after Lascaux, no more art. He was something like they did it all already.
Yeah,
Like
it's
they
all
were,
been done.
yeah. Obviously, he got over that.
Yeah.
You're right. That's an incredible, incredible drawing of something that was not present, drawn by
Yeah.
memory. So, what is this? This is our final slide, everybody.
Yeah, I put that in there just to give an idea of what these spaces were like, even without the art. How incredible. I mean, visually, it's incredible. And it's a buffet line of textures. I mean, you've got slick and wet and porous and dry and dusty. I mean, you have it all in there, which I put it in there because one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the why it's relevant today. I've been watching a lot of the documentaries, and something that kind of was bothering me was when they were talking about the art, in a cave where there was the art, they would say, they would call it a gallery.
Mm,
And where the paintings were, they would call that a panel.
hmm.
And I understand for descriptive purposes, we all understand what that means, but I feel as if perhaps we're imposing something on to this work that isn't really the case. Um, uh, we live in a culture that wants to deconstruct everything. This is, of course, a whole nother conversation, but our modern museums and galleries have separated our senses and carefully separated them. And these spaces are often kind of antiseptic, hospital-like spaces just for this looking, the more I think about it, I think that these caves were multi-sensorial uh, chambers for having experiences in. And when you think about, I mean, I could talk more fully at some point about the evidence for sound and music. Obviously, we've got the paintings, and they're not like a gallery. They're not at eye level. You know, some of them are on the ceiling, some of them are under a rock, some of them are, you have to climb through some crazy thing to find it. They're immersive. They're multi-sensorial experiences, and so I put this in there. Just, I mean, it must have been awe-inspiring to them to go into a space that looks like this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely incredible. And I love that you point that out because that's something that I didn't notice that they're calling them galleries and panels. But now that you mention it, oh yeah, of course. That seems like such an you said it's such an imposition.
Yeah, and you would think, I don't know, it just kind of was an insight that came to me. It's like, wait, these are not galleries.
Yeah.
And by calling them galleries, we're limiting our perception of what they actually were and
Well,
actually are.
I mean, I really rather doubt there was a concept of art then. These weren't artists, they were just people, I think.
Yeah, well, the other thing, watching this, I watched, it was a very good documentary, hour and a half long. But the host kept referring to the drawings and paintings as decorations.
Oh God.
And I just, as an artist, I cringed at that. And I very strongly, we're not experts in this field. We're speaking about this as artists, but it's one time where I feel like I can pull out my art card, and say these are not decorations.
Yeah.
This is functional art.
Yeah.
We could talk about what that function was, but it's not decoration. They're not galleries. I think of them as, like I said, multi-sensory chambers for having an experience.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, it's evident, that last slide went into, that was texture uh, and visual, and we have the art, which is visual. You have the flickering candlelight, which is going to be creating this proto cinema, and the sound. So what I said before about the acoustical mapping and the correlation between acoustical hotspots and placement of the visual art is fascinating. And the stalactites, flow stones, and other features, because of their mineral content, are actually quite sonorous. And in some of the caves, there are repeated marks on these things to show that they were played like a lithophone,
Wow.
like a drum.
Huh.
And not only that, the acoustical mapping has recognized that the resonant frequency where some of these caves are located, that resonant frequency correlates with the frequency of the human voice. And so music. Oh, and we've also found remnants of flutes. And we know from analyzing the flutes that this is not a signaling device. This is a melodic instrument. And there's some controversy there, but it seems to be, at least one of them seems to be the pentatonic scale, which is interesting. So you have that. I think those are 40,000 years old. I think there's painting, there is music, there is sound, perhaps ritual, perhaps dance. It's multi-sensory, uh, immersive. It's funny, the abstract art wasn't recognized as being art at all. Uh, and we just now as a culture have these sort of immersive, multi-sensory exhibits that we're going to.
Right.
Uh, but that doesn't mean they weren't doing it then. It could be that we've been deconstructing things so much that we've failed to see the interconnected whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as that's another intuition of mine. I just feel like there was a lot of things going on here.
Absolutely. I just want to dig into the word deconstructing a little bit. Do you mean conceptually separating things that are in fact not separate?
Well, I think we've talked about this before, the academic tendency to break things down in order to understand them. And I think it's coming from science too. I mean, you
Yeah,
understand something really well by taking it apart. And I think it's in our culture a lot. And you know, we've separated the senses,
right.
but they do make an interconnected whole.
I mean,
And
it's so obvious, right?
yeah,
That it should go without saying, but you're absolutely right. The way we experience the world these days, certainly, if not at all times, we're operating on the cultural assumptions that we inherit
yeah,
rather than how we actually experience things.
yeah,
And that's a real shame. Separating out the senses, separating out the different disciplines, everybody in their own little silo. Nobody's, thank God we're starting to have this movement of, promoting interdisciplinarity. But as you point out, that's how things started.
yeah, yeah. And there's benefit to that, but there's also benefit in looking at the whole.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I want to ask you before we jump into why these things should matter to everybody today. How did you first discover cave art, and like, what is it? Why is it so meaningful to you as an artist?
Well, I think, I remember making my first abstract painting. I was like 13 and really connecting with that as a modality for expression. And then in art school, I remember I was taught that Kandinsky invented abstract art in 1910. He made the first abstract painting. And I don't know when it was that I discovered they were making abstract art in caves. You could see how slow it was for the recognition to come. 19th century, they discovered him. And I'm going to call art school in the 90s, and they're still not acknowledging that we actually made abstract paintings tens of thousands of years ago.
And they're still not.
Yeah, which I don't know why that's the case. But I find it absolutely inspiring because I make my art for reasons that transcend the career and ego. Um, and that's hard to find in the art world today. But you see in this work, it's so powerful. And it is anonymous.
Mm.
It's made for a purpose that benefits the whole. And I find that really inspiring. But why it's important to me, we could we could talk a long time about that. I just find it endlessly fascinating. The fact that we don't know. I mean, number one is in the motive.
Right.
Why? Why did they take such risks? And we have something to learn from that because I think that the huge breakthrough that was made, and we were talking huge time span, but it's really a narrative about the distributed cognition. The hominid brain has existed for 2 million years, and I think it's doubled in size roughly twice in that period of time. I think it's no coincidence that became bipedal in that time. And so, in terms of neuroscience, a reciprocal relationship was formed, a distributed cognition between the brain and the hands, because we were bipedal and our hands became free to make tools. And so this positive feedback loop occurred between the brain and the hands. And then the big step was that in cave art, we projected our mind outside of the skull and onto the cave wall. The mind came out of the body for the first time and became a mirror, not for the body, but for the mind. And because it's not about seeing, but it's about thinking with what we see. So it became a tool, our first tool, thinking tool, which you look at all the sophisticated innovations that we've had ever since. they're really a continuation of that same process, that pivotal moment when we projected out onto the wall. And one last point, uh, when it was projected out onto the wall, we further distributed our minds to others, to
Right.
other brains,
Right.
which made a network of brains for solving problems, a proto language. And the thing that is so fascinating when we look at these drawings and paintings, we're part of that network.
Yeah.
It becomes a time machine.
They're thinking
All
through us.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're part of all of those millennia disappear, and we have a relationship with this person that lived tens of thousands of years ago. We're part of that distributed network.
Right. So we're not just in the cave with them, we're in their heads.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And I am so glad you bring that up. I've always been more attracted to the animals, but now you're getting me into those, the abstractions more. I didn't even know about them until I met you. About the animals and just the stunning sophistication of the animals. But on, what you've just said, I think it's now a good time to introduce Clayton Eshelman's stunning hypothesis. Because yeah, it is related to what you just said. So I was going to say, for those who don't know, I'm going to assume that very few people would know. But so Eshelman, an American poet, he spent 25 years in Europe studying these caves. He's not a scholar. He was, like us, just studying them as a poet and somebody, just as a human being. Somebody was just fascinated by them. And after studying them for 25 years, he came up with the idea that cave art, because it really did erupt all at once, 40,000 years ago, all over the world. And the fact that it's, let's say, 50% animals, right? You don't see landscape in there. You don't see individual plants. You hardly see human beings depicted.
That is so fascinating.
Yes.
Where are the people? You
Yes.
talked about you talked about stick figures earlier, that the presumption that it would be stick figures because they're primitive and they don't know how to draw. Uh, they knew how to draw.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where are the people?
Yeah.
And when they do come up, and it's a very small amount, they are stick figures,
Exactly. Exactly.
and they're usually being killed. They have spears in them, or they look like something, or they're turning into an animal. They're a therianthrope.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that is so fascinating. Why didn't they draw and no faces? You could say, well, they didn't know how, but they did know how.
Oh, no, no, no. You could never say that. I mean, look at the animals. There were a lot of vulvas,
Yeah.
vulva-like forms.
Yep.
Talk about that. But I do wonder why no depictions, scenes of everyday life, like people hunting in the forest or fixing food. There's nothing like that the world over. Granted, a lot of this art could have been lost, but so Eshelman's point is that, okay, let's talk about why such a fixation on the animals. And they're not, animals that were consumed. So his thing is the painting of animals on the cave walls arose from a crisis, a psychic crisis, because this is around the time, 40,000 years ago, that the human was separating off from the animal, was becoming aware. We were becoming aware of ourselves as something different. And
Yeah.
Eshelman's explanation is that at that time we had all these action at a distance technologies, right? Spears, right? You can stand back from the animal way back and affect it, kill it from a distance. Arrows, weaponry placed us at a distance from the animal. And so we were recognizing that we weren't just animals' prey, we were predators. We were recognizing our differentness. And moreover, I mean, that was a crisis. That's a trauma. Because it took us out of, originally, the assumption is, we experience the world just as a seamless whole. It's what David Hinton calls Paleolithic consciousness. we were just all, there was no separation. I mean, man was not conceived as separate from, superior to living separate from nature. And that this gradual separation presented a crisis because we both longed to be separate, right? And longed to return to our animality. And going back deep into the cave, it's kind of like going back in time, was a reclamation, I guess, if only for a little while, of, of being seamless, being in continuity with the animals. So we both longed for that and longed to be separate. I mean, he calls it, I can't remember the word, but this is a deep, deep, deep and troubling ambivalence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and this goes to what you were saying earlier, sort of like the projecting of our minds outward into this distributed mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So remember when we were looking at the bull and I pointed out that a lot of times the animals were drawn in such a way that it was clear the person who drew it was clearly using the existing topography of the wall, whether fissures or the undulation, clearly using it. Okay, so imagine you're living in this seamless continuity with the empirical world, and one day you're in the cave and you're seeing that crack and you're seeing into it the back of a bison, right? Because number one, we tend to impose what is it, pareidolia,
Pareidolia. Yeah.
especially faces onto like ink stains or whatever in the environment.
Yeah.
That's a human response. But
Yeah.
then the person seeing that really resembled, the back of an animal, went in there and completed the animal with the pigment. And so, whoa, I mean, that's something extremely profound right there, right?
Yeah.
That, I think, Eshelman calls it the birth of the imagination, and with it, the birth of conceptual thought, and with it, what remains with us today, this abstracting of ourselves from nature.
Yeah. Yeah. The imagination, that's huge, and externalizing the imagination out into the world and communicating it. So
Yeah,
it's a shared experience of imagination.
right.
It's a huge step.
So it's a move from the experience of just being part of, at one with the given world, right? The empirical world that we experience with our senses, a move from that to this whole other world that only exists, in
Yeah.
our minds. Whoa, so that's the beginning of the fall. He calls it the exile, but it's also something that makes us human.
Well, it catapulted us from hiding in the shadows to
Right,
dominating the entire planet.
right.
I was saying how the hominid brain doubled over 2 million years, but I think since the cave, I don't know at what point, if it was when we were making the cave drawings or now, the brain has actually gotten smaller.
Oh,
So it wasn't the size of the brain, but the way we used the brain we had.
yeah.
So I think it's Daniel Dennett that talks about thinking tools, and yeah, maybe it detached us from nature, but it also uh, we crossed the threshold from being reactive to our environment to dominating it,
Yeah. Which,
which
I mean, it's easy to sort of, dump on, as we do the birth of dualism, from which we suffer terribly today,
mm,
you know. But you can't just look at that without also acknowledging that it has made us incredibly powerful.
yeah,
It was a survival strategy because we were just, one with the animals. I mean, we were being eaten by them, eating them whenever we could, to being dominant over them.
yeah,
That was the birth of human hegemony in the world.
the birth of us now.
Yeah.
They invented us. we are them, which that kept coming into my head over and over again.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and there's bad things about it, and there's good things.
Right.
With every tool, you have the dual use problem. It can be used for
Right.
good
That's right.
things and bad things, and that duality, and we've talked about this before, the separation from nature. We've forgotten so much of what it means to be part of that world that birthed us. But then, we are able to fly across the oceans, and we have vaccines and all kind of refrigeration, you know, all these amazing things. But to some degree, we have forgotten. And I think that is one of the useful things about cave art is helps us to remember that we had an integrated connection with nature, which I think we're lacking now. We have sort of a collective psychosis, and we're having a huge amount of depression, anxiety, mental health problems. I think there's many things about thinking about cave art, looking at cave art, that can teach us how to go forward in the world that we have, um, by looking at what our ancestors did.
Yeah. It's almost like, okay, so we're twofold always. We're deeply ambivalent, always in conflict, I think, as a species, because we are animal. We are. I mean, we're still
Yeah,
animal bodies and very much animal brains, but we're also something else, which is we have symbolic thought and language and this whole world of concept, abstract thought and imagination. Okay, I'm going to throw in there that we don't quite know how animals think. I mean, I know they do think, but that's the
yeah,
assumption, is that what makes us different is conceptual thought,
yeah,
right? Abstract thought.
yeah,
So we are fundamentally twofold. And so I think, what you're suggesting is, while we don't want to get rid of this power that we have for abstract thought, conceptual thought, and it's given us, so much that we appreciate, we also have forgotten that we're something else. And we need to be reminded that we are first and foremost animals,
yeah.
right? Um, how can that help us today? People, regular people.
I think we have a crisis of meaning today. Again, I go back to the motive. What made our ancestors take this incredible risk? I think about this a lot when I make art. The courage that it took, and the drive to communicate something. And why did they do that? It was not for survival. You're left thinking they were looking for meaning. And when I look at those paintings and drawings, I'm left thinking they found it.
Yeah,
And I think that that's something we're starving for in society today is personal meaning, shared meaning, embodied experience, rituals that connect us and don't isolate. Technology has done so much to make things convenient, but in a way, we're more isolated.
definitely.
I think we're looking for a sense of awe, and that's something that I get from looking at this work. So much as everything is explained to us, but there's something really great about not knowing.
Oh, yeah.
It projects your mind into a humble state where it's like, you know what, I don't know. There's some things we don't know, and it's okay not to know. And actually, there's power in not knowing, and just kind of basking in that sense of awe, of mystery. And I think we're hungry for a transformation, actual transformation. And getting ready for this, and thinking about that multi-sensory chambers, I'm left thinking, they were probably having some kind of deep experiences, pushing the boundaries of perception. These caves with no light would be like a sense deprivation
Deprivation,
chamber,
exactly.
chamber where apparently you can see these phosphenes and entoptic imagery, and it's like the boundaries get blurred, like what's inside my head and what's in the cave and what's under the banner of the sky. uh it's the boundaries of perception and location became blurred, and there are magical spaces, it seems to me, where by going in, suddenly you have everything in these caves. And yeah, I come back to that over and over again. Meaning, personal meaning, shared meaning, a break from meaningless distractions. I think we're hungry for this. And our ancestors were in a much more difficult situation, uh, just trying to survive, and they were able to find meaning. We can too.
Yeah, yeah, that's you said so much. I want to go back to something you said early on in that bit there. Um, awe, right? Our need for awe,
Yeah,
for feeling that kind of humility and just this incredible gratitude for being part of something so mysterious and wonderful.
yeah,
And it's the ultimate mystery. Why, why
yeah,
is there something rather than nothing? And why is there this particular something? Um,
yeah,
but so when we went to Chauvet 2, the replica, I was with my entire extended family, which included at the time a lot of kids, like young. And I was worried because I brought them there and I was excited. I was worried they're going to be like nah, 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 on their phones the whole time,
yeah,
which they probably were in the beginning. And then they started looking. Whoa, man, they were transfixed. They felt the awe. And I mean, I was really impressed and so moved by that. And then talking about it later, we started talking about, why did you feel that those paintings or drawings were so powerful? And some of them use the word presence. They just have this presence, right? And so looking at images on this stupid little thing, just isn't cutting it.
yeah,
Looking at images on digital images is not the same as experiencing art in the flesh and feeling that presence, what Walter
yeah,
Benjamin called the aura. Now, I
yeah,
believe in aura. I believe in presence. I don't care if people think it's woo. I think
yeah,
that the transmission of information and feeling and whatever it is that you're talking about, all of that can only be transmitted in the actual presence of the thing, the work of art.
yeah. How amazing that can communicate to young people that have probably grown up with a little computer in their hands,
Oh, they have, yeah.
and to have something that is tens of thousands of years old emit presence. I don't think it is woo. I think science will unpack this at some point. What is it, 95 or 99% of thinking is unconscious?
Yeah,
They say.
98. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and it's our brain is an incredible information processing machine, and all this information is coming in, and I think a lot of it is subliminal. We
Oh,
don't
yeah.
we don't recognize it, but and this is why we teach the way that we do, because we have to unfortunately teach people how to see,
Yeah.
because it's not a point of emphasis in our education system today, which is really sad.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think it's not so much about teaching to see, but remembering how to see,
Mhm.
because we do see. It's just becoming aware of it, and that's so interesting. I haven't been to these caves, and I have to use my imagination, but I could only imagine for them, it again, it's an immersive experience, right? It's you have the topography and you have the color and you have the placement, and it must be so powerful to override the computer in the hand, and have an experience. And that's really what we're lacking. I mean, cave art, the opposite of cave art is sort of sitting on the couch doom scrolling.
Yes, exactly, exactly. But I do want to throw in there that some viewers might be wondering. I talk about presence in the caves, but I was at a replica. Okay,
Yeah,
so all right, how can there be presence in the replica? Well, the shape of the cave, as you're saying, is that chamber. You're at least in there, three-dimensional, in a three-dimensional space. They really did a very good job of replicating, not just the visuals, but a lot of it. It's to create this multi-sensory environment. And they had artists who could really, really capture, the gesture or the essence of the stroke, each stroke. Now, I'm sure that experiencing the real thing is way better. I'm not
Oh, sure.
claiming it's just as good.
And they're closed off because they were getting destroyed, right?
They're getting destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that does need to be said. Yeah. I have also a theory that we need, as human beings, altered states of consciousness. I mean, we know that because we dream,
Yeah.
There's something integrating about altered states.
Yeah.
So when you think of the cave paintings, and you can't just look at the images, you got to think about the context in which they were made. They lived very much like we did. They did not live in the caves. Okay. They
Yeah.
lived in the daylight world out here on top of the earth. And yet they recognized the need to go in, back in the darkness in the earth, where they're having these antoptic, visions and the oxygen deprivation and maybe altered
Yeah.
states. And
Yeah.
that's what we need as well. We need something other than today, as you said, our daylight world is sitting on, the couch doom scrolling, and
Yeah.
we're miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. That does speak to how pivotal, integral it is for our species. Again, go back to that motive. They didn't have to do that, but there was that hunger for transcendence,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, or transformation, to have that transformational experience, a deep experience. And I'm not sure if I said it before, but the entoptic imagery is seen when the brain waves shift. And there's many ways to achieve that. As a musician, anybody that plays an instrument knows that is a very good way to enter that state. Meditation, drumming, absolutely, dancing,
Mhm.
and making art. So it seems as if they really were exploring what consciousness meant. What was his existential question? What are we doing here? And they seem to be satisfying that hunger. And we still have that. We are them.
I know we are right. That's another important thing, for people to know about cave art and to really experience it as best you can. I mean, can't go to the real things,
Yeah.
but to understand that we are so much more than our daylight consciousness. 98% of thinking is unconscious.
Yeah.
We might say, and this is confusing, but 98% of consciousness is unconscious, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we need to acknowledge that, that we have this deep wealth within us of the darkness and the mystery and all the stuff that we're not aware of and maybe even can't be aware of, and experience that. And maybe it's about oscillating between, the daylight world of everyday life and this deeper state of consciousness,
Yeah.
that we,
This acknowledgement that our daily life is not all there is.
yeah.
There's got to be more than this. And of course they must have been thinking about death and what happens there.
Mhm.
I think we're still thinking about it.
Well,
What
no,
are we
most people
doing?
are running away from that thought,
Yes,
doing
yes,
everything they can to avoid it.
that's true.
That's the final darkness. So maybe it's a way of like kind of getting, familiar with it and being okay with it.
Yeah, coming to terms with it, and
Yeah.
the fact that we can be better
Yeah.
as individuals, and as society too. I don't know. I think our ancestors doing this proves that they felt that. I think that you explore this consciousness, and you come out of the cave
Yeah.
different. And this is what art does, right?
Right.
Art doesn't show you what to see so much as it shows you a way of seeing, a
Mhm.
lens of opening up your eyes to see the world in a new way, a different kind of attention, to see things that have been hidden under your nose all this time, but you just didn't see them because you weren't attending in the right way.
When attending. I think that's how people, non-artists can also, learn from cave art. It's a metaphor, right? Of this, the daylight world is not all there is,
Yeah,
ordinary consciousness is not all there is. Life is not all there is. There is this other big thing, called death, which is necessary for there to be life. And it's like we're split in half, so impoverished because we're refusing to acknowledge that other deep half, and maybe it's even more than half.
yeah,
And I mean, we don't even need to cite statistics. Everybody knows people are deeply unhappy, young people deeply
yeah,
unhappy. There's nature deficit disorder.
yeah,
Clayton Eshelman would call it animal withdrawal. And animal is now a metaphor. We can say withdrawal from our animal bodies, our
yeah,
experience of, our knowledge of, our awareness of, and being in touch with our animal intelligence. We're in withdrawal.
yeah,
And we don't know it.
yeah. And we're painfully distracted
Oh God, yeah.
by meaningless stuff. And it is horrible.
But we're so addicted. I mean, I myself, right? We're hypocrites in saying this. We're not really, because we're not claiming to be otherwise, but like we are really distracted. And as if it wasn't hard enough to see, say, 60 years ago, very difficult to see the world because there's thought. When you're thinking about something, you're not seeing, you're not experiencing what's given, right?
Yeah,
We're,
yeah,
we're lost in thought. Everybody knows the experience of driving, and you're like, wait, how did I get here?
yeah,
Remember it because you're absorbed in your thought.
yeah.
All right, so 60 years ago, we weren't seeing the world in quite the way that we could, because we've evolved this enormous conceptual apparatus. But today, it's especially severe. I mean, I can hardly pull myself away from my phone, and all I'm doing is making me feel really frustrated and, horrible.
Well, the forces that be that are designing this know the psychological weakness is innate in human psychology, and they're exploiting it. And it's really hard to resist that. But I think if you have and I tell this to my students, if you have a practice with your hands,
Mhm.
drawing, painting, playing the guitar, doing something with your hands, unplugging and experiencing that, you can hit the reset button
Yeah.
and have an antidote to this. And of course, this is really important because it's only going to get only going to get worse with AI looming on the horizon. Well, it's not on the horizon.
Oh
It's
no, we're in it.
we're in it.
Yeah.
I in its infancy though,
Yes.
which is uh important to recognize. We're just starting off with that.
Yeah. So we need the experience of so much right now, all of us emerging back into the light, having had this profound reconnected experience, being reconnected with the totality of who we are, and with everything else out there. You can think of it as like the ecological consciousness, because you kind of you lose yourself, right? When you're creating something, you lose that sense of self, and you're connecting with, the vast mystery.
Yes. Something that transcends your ego.
Yeah.
There's another thing in cave art. There's no acknowledgement of these individual artists.
Right.
It's who knows who these people were. It's creation for a different motive.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, for artists, I think that revisiting cave art is really important. We've, as a group, contemporary artists, really abstracted ourselves from, the sensory world, and also just sensual making. So much has to be concept now. We're approaching it from, the 2% rather than the 98,
Yeah.
let's say, of our brains.
Yeah.
Um, but so for people who are not artists and have no desire to take up a creative practice, what would you recommend?
Well, I firmly believe, after teaching for 20 years, I hear this a lot. I'm not an artist. I'm not talented.
They say that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I firmly disagree. You look at the length of time of the Pleistocene. Let's see if I can get this stat right. I think it's been 500 generations since the invention of writing. Uh, but the number of generations that humanity have in the Pleistocene is 80,000.
Oh, wow.
You think about that, and we're making art all the time. I think, look, making art, being an artist, we're all artists. I
Right.
think it's our neurological inheritance.
Right.
It just happens that you've been born into a culture that doesn't believe in art. And so you haven't been taught it from a young age and you don't have a practice. But it's our inheritance. And everyone should claim that inheritance because I think it's a key to mental health and forging ahead in the uncertain age that we have. It's a way to keep yourself sane.
And what I say, because again, not everybody is going to take your word for it and say, I know a lot of
Right.
people who are going to say, but I can't even draw because I mean, I'm too afraid to try because I'm so bad at it. Something like that.
Yeah,
I think that creativity can be pursued in many different ways. I mean,
absolutely.
walking into the forest, without your phone, not knowing where you're going, figuring it out as you go along, really making an effort to look at things and smell things. And that in itself can be the move from the daylight world of ordinary consciousness into the cave, and you reemerge from it different, changed. I mean, there's so many ways to be creative. The opposite of creativity is, as you said, sitting on the couch, doom scrolling, even
Yeah,
walking around the city, just seeing things, not knowing
yeah.
that's creating.
Seeing through different eyes.
Yeah, yeah,
Even if it's cooking, making a delicious meal and having a sensual experience eating that meal.
yeah.
It's changing the way that you attend to the world around you. Yeah, the motive is the thing that I think people struggle with. Well, I can't do it. Why should I? I'm no good. We have this complex about art and what art is. But yeah, that's a tricky one. How do you get people past that? But I think if somebody is willing to just buy a sketchbook and and doesn't even matter what you're drawing, um, just having a practice of moving graphite onto to paper and feeling that and knowing that that's your mind there. It's a way of knowing who you are, and if you know who you are, you can deal with the things that life throws your way much better. And I've had students come back years later and say how helpful um a creative practice was for them, even if they are in a completely different world, weren't an art major, but still are making paintings or drawing because it feeds them in a way that nothing on the computer can. It's embodied, and this is the thing about the computer and the AI
Yeah.
is that it it is disembodied. And without a body, you can't have passion. You can't have an emotion. Having an embodied practice is, again, it's like the reset button, and it's healthy for your brain. Because I tell my students, when you work with your hands, you're thinking.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. And you're right. You said earlier we can't feel, without our bodies. We can experience emotion. I would argue we can't even think. We can't think. We're
Yeah,
so resistant to this idea that the body is intelligent. That's really so troubling to me. So having any kind of embodied practice, maybe it's Tai Chi,
yeah.
uh, is going to reawaken, that 98% of you that you're starved for right now.
Yoga,
Yeah.
um, even running.
When we were in France this past summer, I got my entire family into watercoloring. Did I tell you that?
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah,
Oh my God. And they're still doing it. My parents are still doing it.
it's fantastic. It's a powerful thing, and we
It
can
is.
reclaim a lot of our humanity by
Yeah.
having that practice. And I believe in the UK now, even doctors can prescribe certain kinds of actions with the hands because we know you can rewrite the neural pathways of your brain
Right.
using your hands.
Yeah.
With a crisis of mental health that we have, that really seems to should be the first line of defense instead
Yeah.
of going to pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. Yeah. Great practice and moving. I mean, exercise, any kind of exercise, as you said,
Yeah,
running,
yeah,
um, walking aimlessly.
yeah,
Um, yeah. Well, I hope that I hope that we will have turned on the non-artists among our viewers,
yeah,
to really explore cave art and to get this Juniper Fuse. Okay, okay. Caveat: it's a weird book, Juniper Fuse, right?
yeah,
It's half of it is Eshelman's poetry, which I was not so taken by and kind of stopped reading. But the other is his narrative, and he talks about, I mean, myth, magic, metaphor,
yeah.
uh, the birth of imagination and how that transformed humanity. He talks very much about our fall. Um, I want to read this quote because it's so funny. I'm sorry to offend the Christians, but the limitation of Western Christian civilization. He's okay. So those are my words. Here's what he says. Focused on a raised and broken man on a cross, we have lost the perspective offered by the triangle balanced on its apex, a poised life gate, as it were, pointing down to and cathecting an underworld, which might make us comedically earthy rather than apocalyptically heaven obsessed. We got to go back down to the earth in every metaphorical sense.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so there are a lot of real gems in the Eshelman book.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a great book, and
yeah.
the metaphor that I love is the juniper fuse and
Yeah.
the notion that a tree that has grown only from the sun, that parts of that tree were taken into the darkness of the cave to ignite that darkness, so that they could draw on the walls, which in turn illuminated the human mind.
Yeah.
I love that metaphor, and it's become the name of a new series of work that I'm working on, Juniper, because I love that metaphor, and the value of returning to that I think is enormous. Thinking about it,
Yeah.
especially with AI. The notion that cave art is our mind projected out into the world, and every other technology is another version of that.
Right.
I think that AI is particularly important right now because we stand at a threshold. AI is a big one.
Yeah.
Look back, it's like the internet, that was a big one. These thresholds that we cross. And here, we put our mind out in the world, and this mind is talking back. And I think it's natural to fear new tools because of the dual use problem, and rightfully so. But I think we can learn a lot from our ancestors and how they navigated the cave and how they navigated to becoming who we are. That AI is, we're conscious of how we're using it, so that we create a tool that is part of the community. The scenius is the word that I like to use. And I
Tell
think
the
of,
viewers it's a play on the word genius.
yes, yes, and I was going to bring this up when talking about cave art because this wasn't, one ego going stealing away and making these paintings. It was obviously a community effort. So scenius is the genius of a community. The
Yes.
fact that
Right.
there is no genius that we've had that did not have support from surroundings, the individuals in a community that allowed them to become who they are. And when we think of AI as part of the scenes, I think that's why creative people, artists need to be engaged. We're at the infancy of AI, and if we treat it the right way, we can have a genius as opposed to it being abused, uh, like that dual use problem. Uh, Creative people can be involved in this, so we make sure that we have a world that we want.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so important to say that neither of us is a Luddite. We're not and anyway, even if we were, there's no going back, you know.
Hmm.
It's just that we recognize that we are at a threshold, a crossroads, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a big one. It's a
yeah,
really, really big one.
a really, really big one. A handful of tech billionaires are calling the shots, and they're the ones deciding how the rest of humanity is going to live on this earth. I don't think so. We have a choice. We have a choice. So
Yeah,
that's what I want. Okay, they can do that. AI, whatever. I hope that we will use it responsibly. But what I want is for people to go back to the organism, the animal that we are, and reclaim that sensory intelligence that our Paleolithic forebears had, and that consciousness, that kind of ecological consciousness of being seamless with this earth. Okay, even
yeah,
if we have both, I just don't want it to be just this one.
yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, creativity is undefeated. It made cave art and it made AI, and it
Yeah.
can also help us make the right AI because
Right.
it still is in its infancy.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right. And if we just kind of bumble along, without thinking about it, five people are going to be making the decision for, how the rest of humanity evolves or does not,
yeah,
devolves,
yeah,
that's just not fair. It's not right, you
yeah.
know? So is that a good place to end it? Do you think have we talked about everything you wanted to talk about?
I think so.
So I think this has been a really tremendous conversation, and I cannot thank you enough for, being here and sharing all that you did.
And well, thank you for asking me to be your first guest. It's an honor.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm excited to get this out there, and we're going to be doing a part two, so more to come. We'll have a glass of wine, think about it, and start, thinking about what was left, all that was left unsaid. And there's
Yes,
so much.
that sounds good.